The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters was originally broadcast on July 26, 2022.
Aloha and welcome to the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters radio show, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines. I'm your host, Pamela Timpot, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, and today we are going to cover an update on efforts by the West Maui Taxpayers Association. We're going to hear from the Grassroots Institute on their recent forum to look at how Tokyo has created more housing. And we're going to learn about a new furniture manufacturer who is creating works of wood art for your home, patio, garden, or business. So let's get started. Aloha, and I would like to welcome Joe Pluta to the show with us of the West Maui Taxpayers Association. Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Good morning, Pamela. Thank you. Good morning to you. Yes, I'm feeling fantastic. It's a beautiful day.
It is a gorgeous day here in Maui. You know, you have been doing a lot of different things, and we were just talking about, how challenging things can be and how important it is to look at the positive in life and look at the different opportunities. And I just want to say you have always been one of those people, Joe, who have looked at situations like the hospital situation in West Maui and now what's happening with fires and so many other things, and looked at what can be done. How can we find the positive and how do we work towards that? And I know one of your big passions right now is the fire station in Olowalu. Can you tell us about that effort?
Yes, absolutely, Pamela. Thank you. When you do in Hawaii, when you do something, it's excellent. What the people say, they say "hana ho."
Yes.
And that's one of the best compliments you can ever get when you do anything. If someone says "hana ho," you know that they like what you did and they want you to do it again. Well, in 1992, when we saw our community here in West Maui had one fire station to handle all of the Lahaina area from Ukumehame to Kapalua, we said that's not enough. And the fire insurance was out of sight and ridiculous. If you could get it, fire insurance insurers didn't want to insure property because it was too high of a risk.
Right.
If you could get it, it was the most expensive that you could possibly pay for it. They call protection classes an insurance risk ratio. There's a fire protection class 10, which is the absolute highest risk and the most expensive policy if you can get it. Well, that's what it was from Kapalua to Lahaina Town.
Wow.
Because anybody was over 5 miles away from our one fire station had to pay fire protection class 10. And so Colin Cameron, who at that time was the chair in Maui Land and Pineapple, he had his son Richard Cameron join our West Maui Taxpayers Board of Directors because he was impressed with the work we were doing. And we asked him if we could get a donation of land for a fire station in Napili. So we did that. And at that time, everybody, it had never been done before where a community would raise its own funds, private funds, and build a fire and ambulance station and then gift it to the county of Maui to staff and operate. We made that deal with Linda Lingle, who was then the mayor. She said, Joe, well, there's other priorities we have for fire stations, and while you're on the list, we don't know when we'll get to West Maui. But if you do that, it's got to be turnkey. You even got to buy the fire engine. But all we got to do is staff it. Then yes, we'll put it in the budget.
Wow.
So we raised the funds, and that was many millions of dollars back in 1992, and it's been saving lives, and property insurance values have paid back. Everybody who donated have gotten all their money back, plus dividends ever since then in savings on fire insurance premiums. Well, Olowalu has been on the list for many years because we have an annual historic, you can count on it, regularity of fires that close the highway and that main artery from Lifeline that we have, because we have one way into West Maui and one way out. And that's oftentimes a huge problem when that roadway is closed. You got to get to the hospital, you got to get to the airport, you got to get someplace on the other side. All our essential services are there.
Absolutely.
So when you can't get there, it creates a huge problem. an economic catastrophe for the hotels when it's several hours, because now all their guests miss their flights. They got to come back and see if they can get another room night, and they had the rooms already resold. Of course, the rooms that were going to be occupied, the guests coming in couldn't get there either.
Right.
The workers couldn't get there or go home. It's just a myriad of incredible problems that creates, but that's an annual event.
And businesses island-wide who service that area that are trying to get things in and out.
Because they can't get home or can't get to work for the same reason. And then in 2018, we saw that that we've had varying degrees of problems associated with this, but the biggest problem happened in 2018 when the fire spread all the way down to Lahaina and Lahaina Luna Road, and from up Molawalo all the way down to here, and it almost crossed Lahaina Luna Road. If we would have lost Lahaina town, would have been lost. We came that close, just so close. No one knows except those of us who are here watching and very closely, ready to evacuate, because homes were burned down.
Yes.
Many homes were burned down, and we're just so close to losing all the lights. Sound would go up like a mat.
Right.
Just
very old buildings. Yeah, historical buildings. Yeah.
So they have said, would you do the same thing that you did in Napili for us in Olawale? So we said, okay. I'm getting older now. That was over 20 years ago. But I'm still in the saddle, and we're going to do this again. So we got the support of the Mahana Lua Nui Homeowners Association. They have a fire committee, and a gentleman in charge of the fire committee, Tom English, helped us find a modular fire station where we can build a fire station now for just a fraction of the cost we did back in Napili. So for $2 million, the fire chief picked out the floor plan and design that for the fire station that he would accept and be delighted with, and that cost $2 million. It can be here, delivered on site after they get the $2 million binding financial commitment in 90 days. After we provide that with them, it'll be delivered on site, and it can be assembled in 30 days. So literally, with 120 days after we get the money, we can have this fire station on site ready to operate.
Wow.
We got the land and a donation agreement now. We're working with the County of Maui, a three-way agreement between the landowner, Olawalo Homes Incorporated, West Maui Improvement Foundation, and the County of Maui. We met in the mayor's office, and all agreed that it's going to be a three-way agreement, and we're going to do another Anaho, and we're excited.
That is phenomenal. So let's talk about this amazing fundraising effort, where you're at. And this is such an important thing. I really want to emphasize, sometimes when we talk about the highway and some of the things going out in West Maui, and West Maui Taxpayers Association does a phenomenal job representing their region. But there are many businesses across the island who also do work in West Maui. And everyone can contribute to this effort. This is a community thing. Just that highway is central to us all. So, Joe, tell us all about the fundraising effort and how people can get involved.
Well, thank you, Pamela. The World Wide Web, we've got a website, the West Maui Improvement Foundation.org. And we also have our West Maui Taxpayers website at westmaui.org, which will direct you, if you're interested, to our West Maui Improvement Foundation.org website, where all the details are there. And it's so easy now to be able to donate the page, backup information of why they should, their floor plans showing the modular fire station, all the details, the projected rationale savings for the property owners within 5 miles of Olawale. All of them will be able to enjoy the same benefits of those owners that were in Kapalua to Kahana, over approximately 50% reduction in their property insurance.
Wow.
And all this by a tax-deductible donation. to our 501c3 public charity West Maui Improvement Foundation. And that's why it was created, actually. We created the West Maui Improvement Foundation to be the recipient agency for donations, because we found out that people will donate when they know it's a good cause, when it's going to help them, and when they can get a tax deduction for their donation. So with those ingredients in mind, we formed the West Maui Improvement Foundation many years ago, and it's been utilized for that as the recipient of funds for the needs of the community in erection of public buildings like the Pluta Fire and Ambulance Station. We used it for the Lahaina Skate Park, same type of thing. And when we were fundraising for the Certificate of Need costs for the West Maui Hospital, which we successfully got, which also was supposed to be impossible. So we've done the impossible repeatedly in this community, and it's right. It takes the village. It's not just here. It takes everybody. And West Maui is the economic breadbasket for the county of Maui and the state of Hawaii. Over 50% of all of its revenues come from West Maui in transit accommodations and general excise taxes, transit accommodation taxes, and for the county and property taxes. So we're an economic engine. We got to preserve it and keep open and nourish instead of close down.
Absolutely. And I people forget how difficult it is in regions like this to get their homeowners insurance and the high costs. And, we've seen the stories on the Big Island, right, where people built in areas that just couldn't get insurance. So they were at huge risk. And then when the volcano erupted again, many lost their homes. And so for those in the region, think how much they're going to save hundreds of dollars every year just with this. But more importantly, think of the houses we're going to save and the area that we're going to save and the fires we're going to stop just by having something so close to the region where they typically start. And
the logic is that if the fire department can respond to a call within the 15 minutes of being called, which it can do, and that's so it's going to be able to address the situation before it gets out of control.
Yes.
It doesn't guarantee there won't be any more fires.
Right.
Of course, there'll be fires still, but when and if they do occur, they'll be dealt with rapidly and not spread to a dangerous, out of control situation.
Right.
And all you have to do is turn on the TV now and go to any news station, and what you'll see is fires all over the world and all over the United States that are devastating, burning out homes everywhere, and we're in areas where people said, well, that could never happen to me over here. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
It did, and it has, and it's continuing to do that all across the United States as well, and Hawaii is not exempt from that. The same thing happens here.
Absolutely.
So we have a chance here at Olawalo for people to do the right thing again, and maybe we can inspire other places. With this lower cost, the Haiku fire station, which has been going on talked about, that's the next highest priority for the county. They've been talking about it for years, and it still hasn't been started yet. And it's cost now $16 million is in the budget for that. So if they use our modular concept, we can do that fire station for them for a fraction of that, saving them a minimum of $10 million that they can use for building other sub-fire stations elsewhere in the islands as well. This is a real makes sense, right thing to do for the county of Maui, as well as other places in the state of Hawaii. Could be inspired by this effort and say, why don't we do this? Let's get inspired by this and do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Public-private partnerships are the way that the county government's got to go. We're all in the same boat. Came in different canoes, but we're all in the same boat. We've got to work together, and we can do it efficiently, promptly, in the best interest of all. So, I'm excited about this. People who know about it and learn about the history, they get excited as well. And we need to get something to be excited about today. There's been so much hardship and catastrophe. And we need something to get excited about. This is something that people can get excited about.
Absolutely.
And join together with in harmony and aloha. That's our biggest motto here is that we got to focus on what makes Hawaii, Hawaii. And
yes.
that is the aloha. And my senior pastor of my church, Pastor Lucky Ka'ahumanu, says, for him, aloha means always, love over hate, always.
Absolutely.
That's his version of aloha, and I love that one. And I subscribe to that 100%.
Me too. Well, we want to remind everybody, this is such an important thing, and I love also that the West Maui Taxpayers Association, as well as the Homeowners Association and Tom English found also a great new model. So a way to have a modular fire station that saves a ton of money. And folks, we're in hurricane season, of course. Hurricane season goes till November. That means high winds that we're seeing. And of course, when we have fires and then we have high winds, that's when we see challenges. But you can make a difference today. You can make a difference right now. So you can look at West Maui Improvement Foundation.org, West Maui Improvement Foundation.org. Make a donation. Everything counts, big or small. If you're a resident, think about in those areas, think about how much you're going to save. An investment now can save you, as Joe said, with the fire station that they did in Napili. The return on investment was great. And for businesses in the area and for businesses who go to that area, please take a moment. This is a great donation, and we want to get it done. It can be up and running in 120 days. So, it's possible. And of course, we always say when we talk about permitting, people will say, well, we could do it in, streamlined permitting. We've seen all these examples where it could be done in a week. And most people say, heck, if we could get it done in 6 months, we'd be thrilled. So imagine what we can do. We can do it, and we can do it together. Joe, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing that with us. We've got just another minute. Do you have any quick updates that you want to share with us on the West Maui Taxpayers Association?
Yeah, well, the first major fundraiser we're having in-person event is going to be at the Olawalo Historic Managers Plantation House on October the 23rd. Phenomenal brunch, all-you-can-eat, incredible brunch right there on the ocean in the heart of where the fire stations are going to be. So that information is on our website as well.
Fantastic.
And next thing to remember is October 23rd, our general election candidates night at Lahaina Social Hall. We had a huge success on July 21st with our primary candidates night, and the next one will be on October 13th.
Okay, good, because I was going to say we've got two things on the 23rd. Okay, good.
Yeah.
October 13th. Good.
October 13th is the general election candidates night.
Okay, and we'll bring you back to talk more about that too, because that's going to be a big event, and I know we wanted to spend more time on that as well, but I'm so glad that you covered the fire station because there's so many fantastic things happening with that, and we love, again, it's time to start thinking out of the box on housing and services we need and to look at new options. So I love that you're piloting something new here, and I really want to encourage the community to get behind it and to know you can do a fabulous brunch on October. Is that a Saturday?
Yes.
Okay, good. Saturday brunch, October 23rd, at the Oluwalu Plantation House. This is going to be great, and I'm sure you can also make other donations there as well as today. So we want to encourage everybody to do that. And Joe, thank you for joining us on Business Matters this morning. And I hope
thank you.
and know
Mahalo. God bless you.
God bless you
have
too.
A wonderful day.
You too. Have a blessed day. Aloha. All right. We're going to be right back after a brief message from our sponsor, Mokulele Airlines.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
And we're back. Our next guest is Joe Kent, the Executive Vice President of the Grassroots Institute, which is an economic research organization and a nonprofit taxpayer watchdog that promotes values of individual liberty, economic freedom, and accountable government. Joe grew up on the Big Island and attended the University of Hawaii at Hilo and Minnesota State University, where he obtained his degree in education. Joe was a public school teacher for 8 years here at King Kamehameha III School in Lahaina and Sleepy Eye Public School in Minnesota. Now that's kind of interesting. Sleepy Eye. I'm going to have you tell us a little bit about that, Joe. He is also a former student fellow at the Foundation for Economic Education. Good morning, Joe, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Pam. Thanks so much for having me on the show. And, you just reminded me about Chief Sleepy Eye, which the school was named after in Minnesota.
Yeah. That's an interesting name for a school.
It really is.
Well, I'm so glad to have you on this morning. I had the pleasure of attending one of the forums that you've been bringing to Maui, and you brought Tobias Peter, an assistant director of the American Enterprise Institute Housing Center, and he is a phenomenal speaker, and the topic was really geared around Hawaii, looking at a Tokyo model that he presented for housing. Joe, tell us a little bit about how you brought Peter here and some of the big takeaways that you felt that he shared during the models that he presented to us on zoning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he talked about the Tokyo model for housing, and we've heard a lot about different housing models recently, the Singapore model, the Vienna model, and those models tend to focus more on public housing and the state as your landlord. And we wanted to look around the world to see what other models there were, and it turns out in Tokyo an amazing thing has happened. Housing prices have stayed flat.
Right.
And despite housing prices skyrocketing in all major cities around the world, especially in Hawaii and Maui, home prices stayed flat in Tokyo, and there's one person who knows why, and it was Tobias Peter, so he presented on that.
Yeah. It was, again, as you talk about, and we've done projections from our housing forum and said, at a very, very low interest rate, very low, 4%, and we got that. You don't project forward usually except for when you're looking at reverse mortgages. And that number I was given was told it's extremely low. And I said, well, we want a number nobody will question. Continuing to project out, we've already exceeded the 2024 projection, which would be over $1 million median home price.
Yeah.
And we projected that we would hit over $2 million median home price at that 4% annual increase in 2042. So this hits everybody. Wow. And so to hear that Tokyo has a model where it's staying flat.
Well, just imagine, in Tokyo, you can buy a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And that just almost seems unbelievable right now. And it's been that way for the past 2 decades. And so why, what has happened where they have actually provided enough housing for everyone? And the answer is they've allowed people to build. Their system is really based on a market and property rights system with little possibilities for local interference. And so in Hawaii, we often see public input at every step in the housing process, and that often delays or kills housing projects because often the neighbors don't want the projects next to them, and they're the loudest voices at those hearings. But in Tokyo, almost all the housing is done by right. And that means if they have the right to build in their zone, then they don't need to go through the public hearings. They can just build. And that's partly because they've kind of zoned to allow for more housing.
Right. And let's talk about how they've been doing that with inclusionary zoning.
That's right. So, in the U.S., inclusionary zoning means like affordable housing requirements. But in Tokyo, inclusionary zoning means you're including the lower zones are included in the higher zones. So, for example, in the lowest density zone, the single-family, zone in Tokyo, it allows for 3-story buildings and so on. But not many businesses can build there. But in the higher zones, in the more urbanized areas in Tokyo, you can still build a single-family home. I mean, in the most urban district in Tokyo, you could have a very high-story building right next to a single-family home, and that almost seems unbelievable. But of course, on Maui and in Hawaii, we don't allow the building of housing in the business districts. In fact, on Maui, I think there was recently a bill rejected at the council that would have allowed vacant spaces in industrial areas, but that got voted down.
Yeah, we opposed that bill, and the reason we opposed it, and it also had apartments, that you could have apartments in these areas. And one of the things that I thought they did right in the bill was say, look, because it's in a commercial area, we do want to have an environmental assessment to make sure, for example, if you were going to be within a certain radius of, say, a prior gas station or something, we want to make sure that it's in an area where we're not worried about, for example, some sort of toxic leak. But then there was also inclusion of looking at ways to landscape and to provide buffer areas in the development, which would have been helpful as well. But we got really hung up on things like, well, there might be late night noises, which, by the way, in ag properties, we have that as well, right? You can farm later at night and you can have loud noises. We got hung up on things like lighting and certain things. But the point is that, first of all, in developing a development in those areas, the developer is not going to develop something that they won't be able to either sell or lease out. Right? They're not going to put a huge investment in doing that. And people will have a choice. And it was for apartments. And so, again, people would have a choice. And right now we have so many people saying, our choice is to have a roof over our head. Our choice is to have an affordable place to live. So it was really, in my mind, shocking that we didn't recognize that. And also, it was also apartments. So people could rent there, and it would be a great demonstration model in my mind to look at other alternatives because people weren't making the life choice of, say, owning there at this time. So again, it gave us a lot of flexibility, and I think that what we saw, and you had a great picture of an area where somebody had a large estate home surrounded by, buildings in Tokyo, and that they could keep their large estate home in that area while Tokyo, not us, but while Tokyo allowed other uses. And it was... Yes,
that's right. And in Tokyo, it's if you have a mansion, for example, in Tokyo, you could tear it down and build affordable housing if you want. If you had a group of houses, for example, that wanted to demolish and instead build apartments, they could do that too. But in Hawaii, in Maui, that's a lot more difficult. You would have to ask permission from the government, and that might be a political process. But notice that in doing that, if you replace a mansion, for example, with a low-rise apartment complex, you could actually increase the value of the property since you could get more money per unit. And that's a weird thing. I mean, you think, it's always the most profitable to build a mansion, but that's not true. Sometimes it's actually more profitable to build apartments, or even affordable apartments than it is to build a mansion because, if you think about a mansion can only get a few $1 million, but an apartment complex could be worth tens of millions of dollars because of all the tenants living there. But on Maui, we make it so difficult to build apartments, even low-rise apartments, that the developers often just say, they throw up their hands and say, okay, I'll just build a mansion instead. And that means that, you have one person living there or one family rather than a lot. And that's basically broken our housing system.
Absolutely. And this Tokyo model really showed that. It was just very clear. I wish we had more legislators in the audience because that whole point about how to use the land and how to best utilize it and the way that we can model after Tokyo to have more density in an area. Yeah. And that we in Maui have we have such limited density. I mean, we've got big parcels of land with very few homes on them, and yet the conversion in Tokyo to go from that, if you so choose, as you point out, to increasing your property value by upscaling them and having more density and use on the land, and the tremendous amount of housing it creates. There were some other...
Well, and also...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that in so doing, then you refresh the housing. I mean, a lot of the housing on Maui is many, many decades old, and it's crumbling. And you see, on social media, these posts of a picture of $1 million home on Maui, and it looks like it was built in the 60s. And that's because it's so difficult to build here that nobody tries, and there's really no incentive to tear down old buildings and build a new one there, or a new group of buildings there either.
Yeah. And by the zoning change, this eases that. And then you see brighter, fresher, more up-to-date with code communities as we're rebuilding, because they don't have to go through these long processes to try and get things through, which is really phenomenal. One of the things... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that it also, some people might wonder about infrastructure, by the way, because if you're building so much more, then how do you create the infrastructure needed for all these new homes? But Tobias explains that infrastructure is really is actually benefited by a policy that's more favorable toward development, because more housing equals more tax revenue, which can pay for the infrastructure like roads, bridges, electricity, and so on.
Yeah, that was a great point. And the other point that I found fascinating, but also Tokyo has a different system, was parking. And that in many, they can either address parking in the development or not address parking in the development. But Tokyo, because of the narrow roads, doesn't have there isn't room for on-street parking. So one, that doesn't happen in those areas. And two, and I found this when traveling there, that you cannot even buy a car until you can prove you have a space to park it. So a lot of people were the developers, and I was asking, well, talk to us about parking. But what they found, though, is, of course, there are more walkable, bikeable communities as well in Tokyo, which is really exciting. And then some developments have parking and some developments don't. But again, that's a consumer choice on where you want to buy in.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something on the mainland that they're doing, Minnesota and Oregon and California. They're starting to relax these stringent parking requirements, because not everyone needs or wants a parking space, and that that requirement adds to the price of the house, which that's what we're trying to address, is the houses are so expensive. But also, in Tokyo, they allow for higher buildings. You can, have a 3-story building. In Maui, you can have maybe a little less than a 3-story building. So, but with 3 stories, you can put the parking underneath the housing on the first floor, for example, and that solves the parking problem.
Yeah, and Tobias was saying, look, given where we're at, we're just talking about going up a few feet, because we're just under sort of that 3-story limit that allows Tokyo to do it. But if we just went up a few extra feet, that would make a huge difference, and again allow for more density in different areas. And it's really the whole presentation, and I know that there was so much to share, and he did an awesome job just trying to get through as much of it as he could in the time that we had. So now, and I know he has phenomenal slides, and I know that you've been doing this across the state. What is the Grassroots Institute's next steps? How do we work with the state and counties to move in this direction? Because it is a model that, from those I was sitting with, which included many community organizations that work in housing, as well as developers, we all just went, wow, minor changes, but I mean, some of them bigger in terms of understanding the density things. It's sort of a bigger change, but things like if we just go up a few extra feet, we're still protecting views. We could address parking and other things a different way. Where's Grassroots going next on this?
Well, of course, we brought Tobias out here not to look at how do we make Maui the next Tokyo?
Right. No, that's not our goal.
Because,
yes.
That's right. We just wanted to see what has worked and what ideas can we pull from, like the slightly higher building heights and parking and little things like that. What can we bring to the state? And we've talked to a lot of legislators and council members and who are very much with us when it comes to yes in my backyard. And we hear a lot of people say not in my backyard, no new development, don't try new things. But we want people, and we want to try to find those people who are into the yes in my backyard movements, which have taken a foot on the mainland, in California
Absolutely.
And Minnesota. And many Democrat and progressive circles, by the way, have risen to the yes in my backyard movement, and that is actually starting to take a foot here in Hawaii with a lot of prominent lawmakers. And just last year there was a yes in my backyard, this year, a yes in my backyard bill passed to at least look at the issue and look at the to try to figure out what could we do to restructure the zoning or housing system to make it work. So we're, little by little chipping away, and it takes education, and that's what we're all about, is just trying to get ideas out there, and let's talk, and let's work together. That's what our CEO, president, says all the time, Keli'i Akina, e hana kako, let's work together, and that's our motto.
Yeah. And you folks are doing a great job. You're a phenomenal think tank organization, bringing in experts like this, and it really was a great presentation. And how can people who maybe weren't able to attend but are interested, where can they find it?
Well, thank you. Yes, and we just put it up on our website, and we have the whole video, and we have the transcript. If you go to grassrootinstitute.org, and remember that's singular, grassrootinstitute.org, then you can find the video and read the transcript. And actually, the presentation was really funny in a lot of places too. So, so hopefully your listeners will catch that.
It was, and again, I appreciate the work you're doing. I know you've also been giving testimony on housing issues. This is such a critical need for our state. It's a even more critical need in Maui County, and it's something that we all need to partner with and work together. And I love seeing this phenomenal presentation on this, and you've been doing others. So,
oh yes, yeah, we did another presentation on the Big Island that was well received, and we'll continue to do more of these types of presentations. We have another presentation scheduled in August, on August 18th at the Maui Arts and Cultural Center, and that has to do with fixing the state budget and the county budget.
Yes.
And so if you'd like to learn about that, you can also go to our website at grassrootinstitute.org.
Yes. Well, we're excited with the programming that's coming through. Thank you so much, Joe, for doing this presentation, bringing Tobias, looking at models nationwide and examining different areas that both Maui and the state of Hawaii can look at our housing differently. It is a statewide issue, and it is something that we desperately need to solve. And again, you started with one of the things that I thought was really important, because again, as we're watching our median home prices rise, we're seeing a lot of others coming in, finding that we're, quote, very inexpensive and buying things up, and we're pricing people out of the market. And so the flat models that this presents are some really great models, but again, it's about getting more built. So we truly appreciate that, and you're doing an awesome job. So thank you for all that you do all the time, and this is just one of your many topics, as you point out. We talk a lot about responsibility, fiscal responsibility in government,
That's right.
And I this is also a very important election year. It's really important that we get the right leaders who are willing to explore new concepts and move us forward. And thank you for all that you do in that arena. And I'd love to have you on the show again soon.
Great. Thank you so much. And we just, cheerlead the work that you folks are doing at the Maui Chamber. It's just so awesome to have your voice there. And thanks for having me on the show. We'd love to come back.
Thank you, Joe. It's my pleasure. And I hope you have a great day.
Thanks. You too. Aloha.
Thank you. Aloha. All right. Well, there's so much going on in housing, and many people always think of the chamber in sort of a different arena. And of course, we are the voice for businesses, and we do advocate for a strong and diversified and sustainable economy. But that also includes housing, and our community desperately needs housing. Parents are desperately looking for housing to allow their children to return home after college, or keep their children home when they see other opportunities elsewhere and are struggling here. And businesses are finding now that workers are leaving and workers are struggling to get to work. We're seeing people sleep in their cars. We're at a critical time. So this is a time when we all need to think out of the box. One of the ways that you can help, be a part of the YIMBY movement. Yes, in my backyard. Tell people you're proud. We want housing here in Maui County. And when others are trying to say, hey, let's add different conditions or do things because they don't want something in an area. And sometimes ways of saying we don't want something in an area is asking for a lot of new things that ensures that the development doesn't pencil out and won't be built. It's time that we stop that and we move forward with how we can get things done. Okay, I'm going to move on to our next guest. They are one of the newest members of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, and today we are going to have Marty Coracelle, one of the co-founders of Mime Furniture. They've opened their design studio in Lahaina less than 120 days ago. Mime Furniture is focused on providing Maui County's retailers, hospitality, and office and commercial folks with their needs for locally sourced, high-quality, hand-worked wood furniture. By the way, I'll just say gorgeous, really, really gorgeous. Marty has over 30 years' experience in new product development, program management, and community service while working for AT&T, Charles Schwab, and most recently, City National Bank. As an entrepreneur, Marty has participated and led numerous startup organizations. And his commitment to community service began long ago with his parents in Denver, Colorado, and where they were primarily focused on family, church, and neighborhood activities. A business and marketing degree from City, and prior to heading west to California, he considers the 2-acre Rincon Hill Dog Park and Community Open Space Project in downtown San Francisco one of his favorite career memories to date by helping out with that. Aloha, Marty. It's a great pleasure to have you on Business Matters this morning.
Well, aloha, Pam. Thank you so much for inviting Mime Furniture.
We are thrilled to have you on island and serving our community and a new chamber member with Mime Furniture. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to create this company and a little bit more about your company.
We were actually inspired by the community itself. It's a real important fact that has come about that we need to layer on new economic sources on top of tourism to the Maui County economy. And that got us started a long time ago, about a year and a half ago on this journey. And we were working with individuals like David Daly from MEO and his business development class, or how to start a new business on island. And we assessed many different forms of opportunities, if you will. And furniture ended up being, we found, a large gap on the island from a mass production perspective. There's
Yes.
definitely individuals on the island, world-renowned artists producing furniture. I don't want to minimize them at all, as well as there's some smaller boutique groups that are providing some products off island and on island. But we're really focused on manufacturing in a mass production way, geared towards and focused at mid-market, the middle market. And that would be for the consumer through local retailers. We also want to, from a direct source, want to go after and provide the hotels, the hospitality industry, as well as the commercial or office groups, and an opportunity. There is no available mass manufacturer facility on island, and so quite often they're forced to make decisions in which they purchase off island and bring it across the water. So we want to provide that alternative source to them, Pam.
And you folks are already ramping up so quickly to address these needs. And it's really shocking to me. I know we've discussed it a little bit. Let's talk about, and please share with our audience, all that you've accomplished in a mere 120 days.
Well, that has been an amazing story.
Yes.
And one that we feel that the universe is continuing to bless us with. But it did begin with probably about a year and a half ramp up to that point where we were able to open our design studio in Lahaina on April 1st. And literally walked into an empty shell of a warehouse and were able to put everything in place and start producing furniture within 30 days. And for the last 90 days, we've been going to the Saturday morning swap meet, a very famous swap meet in Maui,
Yes.
obviously. And it's very interesting. The reason we're there is simply to hear from potential customers, individuals, to give us feedback.
Yes.
Is the quality of the furniture where they want it to be or see it should be? Do they appreciate the quality? Are we picking the right woods? Is our pricing models reasonable or not? And that's really what we've been doing for the last 90 days, is market validation, as well as trying to extend our collaboration with the community.
Yeah. I always say there are many different ways, and you're also going to be participating in the Maui to Maui County Festival, which we're so excited about. But, going to the swap meet and going to get involved in some of these shows quickly helps you understand where the market's at. It's a great way to get market research at a very affordable price and really have that direct interaction with your clients. So I think that's brilliant and a great use, and somebody coming into our community so quickly and making such great connections early on has been just a real blessing for you, as you said. And one of the things I wanted to mention is that you also do the old system. There aren't nails and screws in your furniture. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I'd love to. And our key core player there that really has set the Mime furniture culture around quality is Jeff Sullivan. And Jeff is more than just a not just woodworker and craftsman, but is an artisan.
Yes.
The wood quality he's been putting out, and we've been demonstrating at the swap meet, literally stops people in their tracks. And I did not realize, Pam, how many people just thoroughly appreciate solid hardwood products.
Yes.
They are so sick of the veneer and particle board type construction that we see in some of the larger organizations across the world. But it's everything Jeff has been making for Mime and represents Mime furniture, as you mentioned, has no metal parts. There's no screws, there's no nails, there's no brackets to rust. We're creating furniture that we put family names on, that we want to turn into heirlooms, that we want to stay on island. And we're very excited with that, and Jeff is a huge contributor to that fact.
Yeah. As I was sharing with you, I used to, many decades ago, work with local woodworkers through a manufacturing extension program. And it's so true. People really want that quality, and they become heirloom pieces that they pass down from generation to generation. And the quality of your products are phenomenal. And you're using local woods. Let's talk about some of the local woods that you're using to make your furniture.
You know, and you're keying in on one of the biggest challenges that we've actually had, and that is pricing.
Yes.
Obviously, for furniture manufacturing, we can do time studies and say exactly how many hours it's going to take to produce that piece of furniture. The big variable, Pam, as we know, is the cost of the wood. There's a very well-known retailer on island that has been focusing on koa. Their product is phenomenal, but unfortunately, the price of koa pushes the price of manufacturing and their price of retail furniture into a market that can be quite unaffordable for other people. So the way we've addressed that is by working with local wood suppliers. We buy all of our wood on island because that's where we want our economic stream to begin. And yes, some of that wood needs to be shipped in, but that's where individuals like Hardware Lumber Maui, Mark Bootchap, has been helping us to get what we need on island. And from there, we take it and build. As far as the woods that we've been focusing on have not been the high-end koa or the monkey pod, obviously, because of the cost. Even walnut today, even teak today, has gotten to be very, very expensive.
Yes.
So for our high-end, we started with walnut, and to price it, there's still some quality wood down in the oak range, red oak, for instance. But by going after and utilizing different woods within the same craftsmanship and delivering the same quality, we're able then to match a person's price that works for them.
Fantastic.
Does that make sense, Pam?
Absolutely. And it's fantastic because of the choices and the options. I want to briefly, we've got about a minute and a half left, so I want to briefly just talk about where people can find your furniture, how they can reach out and connect with you. You mentioned Swap Meet. Tell them how else they can find you.
Today, they can go to Mime's Eye, who we just want to give a shout-out of. Thank you so much for your community participation. Jean there at Mime's Eye has allowed us to put some of our one bench actually in front of her store so that we could just get feedback from the retail perspective.
Absolutely. In Lahaina.
In Lahaina.
Yeah.
Mime's Eye in Lahaina. And they are selling our products, and you can sell any of them. Also at the Swamp Meet. Lastly, in the next couple of weeks, as we solidify our branding, because we're staying pretty vanilla right now to make sure we understand our position in the market, but in the next couple of weeks, we will be putting up some additional items on our website for local purchases. We may be adding some charcuterie boards or cutting boards because the tourists we found really enjoy those.
Marty, tell people really quick, because we've got to get off, tell them where your website address is.
It is Mime, M-I-M-E, Mime Furniture, all one word, .com.
Awesome. Thank you, Marty. It's been a great pleasure to have you on the show. Again, that's all the time we have for Business Matters today, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines. I'm Pamela Tumpot, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, wishing you blessings and best wishes for a beautiful Maui Day. Aloha.